Hello, and welcome to Mystic Dog Mama, the podcast for soul led dog mamas looking to nourish their dogs and themselves, mind, body, and soul. I'm your host, Dr. Alexia Meller, holistic canine nutrition and well being consultant, here to walk beside you on your Mystic Dog Mama journey. Hi, everyone. If you are new here, welcome. I'm so glad that you stumbled across us. And if you're a regular listener, it's always wonderful to welcome you back. Thank you all for being part of this beautiful and growing community. In today's episode, I'm joined by Joe Flanagan of Ingenious Probiotics, providing probiotic cleaning products and probiotic pet care solutions. Joe started Ingenious Probiotics to reduce everyday exposure to harmful chemicals through a One Health approach where our health, our pet's health, and our planet's health are all interconnected. And while, yes, we do talk about the microbiome and how his company has created beautiful products to support your dog's microbiome and your own, this is not your typical, here's a product you need kind of episode. This is a conversation about consciousness, about shifting from an antibacterial, anti-life mindset into a way of living that actually works with Mother Nature instead of fighting her. Joe's personal journey to Ingenious Probiotics is a really interesting and perhaps unexpected one. He comes from the world of temperature control and air quality, and what he's learned along the way is something we deeply need to hear in a world that is obsessed with clean. Bacteria aren't actually the enemy. They're the foundation of life. They're the little teachers reminding us of what balance really looks like. Together, we explore the whole home ecosystem, what our dogs are trying to show us when things fall out of balance, the hidden harms of chemical cleaning, and why so many of us who love animals are actually the ones being asked to step up and lead this shift, from fear into love, from control into stewardship, and from separation into wholeness. It's such a beautiful, grounding, paradigm-expanding conversation, and I can't wait for you to hear it. So on that note, let's go. Hi, Joe. Thank you so much for joining me on the Mystic Dog Mama podcast today. I cannot tell you how excited I am for this conversation.
Hi, Alexia. Well, we've had a couple of chats, you and I. So, yeah, just strap in.
I love it. And I think this is a conversation, as we were just sort of chatting about before we started recording, that is so important and is going to really resonate with this community as well, because it's not about use this for this kind of conversation or kind of piecemealing the way that we're thinking about health and the way that we're thinking about ourselves in relationship to our pets and all of that. I think the work that you're doing is offering a really valuable invitation for people to step into wholeness and to understand what's going on within the body, outside of the body, out on the kind of wider planetary issue, as interconnected, as informing one another, and that we can't take any kind of action without there being some sort of effect. And so this is the opportunity to really see everything as whole and come into that space of how we tend to the kind of wider systems that we're part of. So I think this is going to be a really important conversation for people to hear.
I hope so. So, yeah, put the kettle on, people, and just sit back and enjoy. Um, yes. Well, hopefully you've got your tea already. You're not getting up now to make the tea, right? But
I've got
yeah,
mine.
absolutely. I think that hopefully they'll find it useful. Um, and one of the things that we mentioned earlier was just first of all, how did I or how did we get into this space in the first place? And quite often it's not relevant, but then to try and frame out just some of the stuff we talk about, actually I find it more and more relevant to bring people up to into the picture, as it were. Um, and my background was temperature control, right? To temperature control, it was quite mechanical. It was quite quirky, not quirky, but kind of geeky. And so I do have a little bit of a geek side, but I'm a people person, so I was always looking and at the people side of it. So okay, we're doing temperature control and we're doing maybe I love when I go to a raw feeding shop and they show me the walk-in freezers. It's I'm so interested. That's my background. And then that led on to the bit I like more, which was conditioning people. So people inside a building, and if they're warm enough, and if they're sitting in a draft, and that whole people side of it was much more me. So kind of followed that, and that became very interesting. When you're inside a building, then let's say you go to work in an office, or you're home in your house, or you're in a restaurant, then what's happening inside that building has an impact in your health. And, you know, okay, traveling there and pollution and whatever, of course, we were looking at that too. But just when you're inside the building. So we were interested in what we call health and wellness in the built environment. So health and wellness in the built environment just means what's happening to people when they're inside something that somebody has built. Could be a train carriage, it could be anything, right? Being built, what's happening to them. So this was everything. This was, do they have enough light? Is it warm enough? Is there trip hazards? All that kind of things comes into that. My side of it was the the environment that they were sitting in. In other words, not what they were sitting on, not what they were wearing, not if there's light, but what were they breathing? How warm they were. So we got involved in making people comfortable with temperature control, and I don't want to get too much into that, but it's extremely interesting making sure people went in a draft and so on. But this is what I love. You're trying to make people better or happier, or even just not exposed to things that would cause their problems. Drafts is a good one, or they get cold, what we call cold toes, warm nose scenario. Just working on all of that. That then led us into air quality. So actually, what was in what people were breathing. Now, you are what you eat, and a lot of the people watching this would be very aware of what they eat and what their pets eat, especially. But you're also what you breathe. So I'm a guy of indeterminate age, of average height and so on. So I'm probably breathing somewhere between 11 and 12 kilograms of air every day. So you imagine 11 to 12 kilograms of air, and air doesn't weigh very much. That's a lot of air. What's in that? I've got these wonderful little filters inside me called lungs that filter stuff, and you got bits of your nasal tract trying to filter other stuff, and you're trying to take the good stuff out of the air you breathe and get rid of the stuff you don't need. All of that's going on. It's very important. So if you're bringing in chemicals and so on, that was obviously going to be part of the issue. So we got involved in air purification. We're putting catalytic converters, ultraviolet, all this kind of stuff into these air moving systems. We're looking at what people breathe in, what comes in from outside. How can we minimize what we bring in from outside? And just again, for the geeks amongst us, to frame this out, when you're in a workplace environment, there are certain kind of, I won't call them laws, but there's certain rules around design where you have to bring in so much outside air, right? They call it fresh air. We never call it fresh air, right? We call it outside air because whatever was in that outside air is coming in, right? If you're in the country, that's, I don't know, weed killer or whatever. If you're in the town, it's dust from road traffic and tires and so on. Okay, whatever. So, but you didn't want people falling asleep at the work desk. You didn't want to build up of CO2. You wanted it, okay. So all of that came into it. So we were getting involved in the powers that be in that side of it. Um, and they were kind of telling us to calm down. Yeah, yes, there is an issue. We're saying all this pollution's coming in. So that's where we were. We were looking at all of this, and we found this thing called probiotics, right? And why were we interested in putting those into air conditioning systems? Well, one of the things we identified as a problem was that when we were trying to get rid of chemicals and particulates and biohazards and whatever, here we are doing this, and the client's spending a lot of money doing it in quite expensive machinery. And then somebody would come along and spray something that smells nice and it's full of formaldehyde or whatever. I'm like, hang on a minute, we're trying to clean the chemicals out of here, and you're putting more in. In the homes, people would be a little bit more familiar with plugins and that kind of stuff. Um, so hang on, what's in this stuff that people are? Oh, we started looking at what's in there. We got to stop that. So we were using the probiotics initially to basically just replace the bacteria that would be causing smells. So by using Mother Nature and Mother Nature's own systems, we put good bacteria in place of bad bacteria. The good bacteria would eat the organic waste. So we'll get into the maybe the back of your chair, maybe your carpets, maybe your bed linen, whatever the application. And it would be eating your organic waste matter that could be giving off smells, especially if it's being eaten by the wrong kinds of bacteria, it's giving off smells. Now, if we stop those smells happening in the first place, then we're going to stop people going for like the pine fresh or whatever it is in the back of the bottle, right? And spraying chemicals and chemicals that will affect even how you smell, right? Because if you can affect how you smell, then that can reduce the actual problem by using chemicals. So let's take away the need for that. Let's just replace it the bad with good. So that was our genesis, and then we looked at from the same point of view. The next on the hit list was cleaning products. So we knew that the same technology, if you like, with the probiotics was available as a cleaning product. And go, well, hang on a minute, let's take a look at this. Is this a thing? So then we started looking at the cleaning products. We're like, whoa, have you read the back of that label? And we were running around going, oh my God. Started talking to people in the cleaning industry. And initially they were saying, yeah, yeah, we know there's a lot of chemicals and it's the problem. Okay. Um, COVID came along and then people just wanted chemicals. But before COVID, it was like, yeah, there's a big problem here. And we thought, great, they've been waiting for us. You know, oh, this is great. We've arrived, guys. So but you keep looking, because once you look into one paper, you look at another paper and you go, what do you mean the cleaning operatives are 57% more likely to get lung cancer and they excluded smokers from the studies over a 10-year period? What do you mean? So you'd mentioned something like that in that industry, expecting it to go, oh my God, thank you, thanks for telling us. And it was very much a meh response, which kind of was a similar response we got when we were talking about not bringing polluted air into somebody's workplace that was mandated that we had to bring in, and surely there was a better way. Meh. So we're looking at all this going, this is before you talk about off-gassing. People will talk about buying cheap furniture and so on. In fact, quick story that I've forgotten about. We were looking at this for an end client one time who had offices all around the world. And this young lady was able to tell me up in Sheffield that in the new office in Shanghai, she was able to tell that the contractor had broke specification with the furniture. From her office in Sheffield, the alarm, air quality alarm went off. And she says, you've just bought normal furniture. You haven't bought the furniture I specified. Because furniture, using gels and resins and kind of all kinds of glues or whatever, and it breaks down over a period of time, and it can be difficult to get that out of your home. But this was a brand new, and she was able to tell from her air quality monitoring system, she saw the spike. So, okay, that's very interesting. At the same time, we had a situation in our own office where one of my guys came and said, "Oh, the cleaner was in on Sunday. She normally comes in on a Saturday." And I was like, how did you know? There's no webcams. What's that? And he picked up his iPad and went, look, and you could see the spike for the air quality monitor was on the Sunday. He says the spike is normally on the Saturday when the cleaner's here. Whoa, what's going on here? So going to my background, interested in people's health. Here we are, kind of in an industry that is responsible for people's health. You go to work in your office or you live in your home, and you're relying on the fact that the people who built those places and fitted them out with whatever's in there have got you in mind and got your health in mind. So we're looking at this cleaning products going, here we got a problem. And we have these probiotic versions that don't cause any of these problems. Okay. And the more we look into it, the more we see connections, not just with cancer for the cleaning operatives, um, but connections with fertility, connections with asthma, obviously. Not just cleaner products, but general household chemicals, of which cleaning would be, in most houses, a big element. Child obesity. So you're familiar, and all the people watching this be very familiar with gut microbiome, and you got to get the right supplements and the right feed, and you're looking after the gut, and that takes care. Okay, so why don't we stop spraying stuff around that's designed specifically to kill microbiome? So let's not be breathing or exposed to it. So if it's affecting a child to the point where it can be a factor in child obesity, we got issues here. Um, other studies along the way have come out. And in fact, when I do a presentation, I had a quick look just to remind myself of one of the presentation, and there was just like slides and slides and slides and slides of just link, just all kinds of papers, whether it's cleaning products or just general health for children, in what they breathe, mold, and it's all connected. So we're looking at this going, there's some chemicals that are quite difficult to get out of your life. You know, if you work in an industry where you really rely on that waterproof jacket, for example, and you're outdoors a lot, difficult to get rid of the chemicals that help make that work. But some chemicals are easy to replace. So we can take that bottle of chemicals out of your hand and put this bottle of non-chemicals in your hand. Now you got to be careful because chemicals, pure water is a chemical. When we say chemicals, most people have the word harsh in front of it in their mind. Chemicals about, right? So that got us into, so we're still on question one, aren't we? Um, then we found out, so okay, we're in the middle of all this. Then and early on, we found that we could do the same for pets and animals directly into the ear, directly onto the gums, directly onto the skin. And initially, we were like, "Oh, that's really interesting. That's fascinating. I can't wait to get involved in that." In the meantime, we got to save all these people from the cleaning chemicals. We've got to save all these people from the cancers and so on. So we're talking to the cleaning industry, and we're getting a bloody forehead where we're banging our head against the wall, and we keep getting tapped on the shoulder. People saying, "Can you come and talk to us about this probiotic from a dog's teeth?" Oh yeah, yeah, we'll be right there. I'm just a bit busy smashing my face against this against this wall over here, um, and eventually the penny started dropping. And one day this lady arrived at the office and we weren't signed written or anything like that. And it's just knock, knock, open the door. There's a lady standing there with two dogs. And she just said, "Are you the cleaner product people?" I mean, yeah. And she said, "My vet sent me." And I go, "Okay." She's, "Yeah." And they start showing her our dog. And I rang the vet because he was a friend of mine. And he's going, "Yeah, you know." And I'm going, "What do you mean itchy dogs are a problem?" Huh? Yeah, Joe, you've no idea. Come and I'll tell you. So I'd grown up as a cat people, but my grandparents had dogs. They had no itchies. There's stuff from the butcher in the bowl in the kitchen with the dogs eating the fresh meat, raw meaty bones of it. So that's what we thought the natural the natural way of feeding dogs was. And when we start getting involved in this, and it like the scales falling from our eyes, and we realized then we'd lost our beloved um, forever pet with cat with kidney disease. We were feeding the best dry food we could buy from the vet, right? Because we didn't know, and of course, kidneys kidneys got him in the end, obviously. So we gradually started easing in that direction. A lady called Patricia Geffen who ran a lovely lady who ran a Facebook group. And again, we're going, "What do you mean there's Facebook groups around dog health?" We're just like, "What's going on?" We're busy trying to save the whole world over here, and we're finding out that this other bigger problem. So raw and holistic support for cat and dogs. She said, "Yeah, come." She tried one of our products out and did a rave review. Said, "Okay, I wanted to check you guys out, and now we want you to come and do a live and whatever." So we did all that, and then from there, met people like Carla Pearson from the No Bull group, and again didn't realize Carla was checking us out and got us to do a live. And again, we're finding out, what do you mean dogs have itchy skin? Where the hell is? I didn't grow up with dogs with itchy skin, and there was dogs everywhere, and. I can still, in my mind's eye, look back in the childhood yard where the next door neighbour's dog is pooed and we just wait for it to go into a white crumble, because it's just, that's what dog poo did back then. Anyway, we then have this wonderful situation where because we're doing our own thing, we can change the direction. I'm not working in a big corporate. I can say, "This fires me. This fires me up." And we started getting people contact us and saying, "Thank you for your help," and we're going, "My God, this is absolutely amazing." So that's how we got into this. Sorry, that's still only question one, Alessia. Sorry. Um, that's where we arrived, and then the kind of like the gates opened, the doors opened, the sky fell, and we were like, oh my God, who knew that this was an issue between what these pets being exposed to chemicals in the home, chemicals out in a walk, road pollution, various degrees of feeding from excellent back down to like convenient. So if everything from convenient being the lower to, whatever. Um, and look at then at longevity issues, and we're like, oh my God, these dogs are so, particularly dogs, cats too, but particularly dogs, so sentient, so involved in the, connected with their owners in a definitely emotional way, possibly spiritual, So yeah, so we that's what got us into all this. Are we ready for question two, or shall I just keep rattling on?
I love it. I love it, Joe.
Yeah.
Oh, this is so wonderful. And like we were saying before we started recording, there's a lot of crossovers in how you and I both got into this world. But I think one of the things that you said that is really a beautiful a beautiful example of how we do create change in the world actually is that, yes, you're focused on the human, but I think it's the same thing that I experience being a holistic canine nutrition consultant, where because people are so emotionally and spiritually connected to their dogs and they will do anything for their dog becomes the vehicle for them to start looking at these broader issues. So it might be because they so desperately want help with their dog and they'll try anything for their dog that all of a sudden they become aware of, oh my God, I didn't realize that these chemicals were in all these cleaning products, or that I needed to be cautious about bleach, or that I needed to be aware that when I'm lighting scented candles, that there are all of these different chemicals that are coming up and we're breathing them in. And I didn't realize that that was also impacting my dog's kidneys and liver and all that. And it's like what it's doing to your dog, it is also doing to you. I think we're maybe more aware for our dogs, one, because we care so much about them, but also they are canaries in the coal mine for
Yes,
us.
yes.
And I think because of their shorter lifespans, we are seeing, to your point, even about obesity with children, we're seeing that in dogs
Mm,
at just an absolutely exponential rate. And what that is doing is showing us where we are experiencing issues in our systems that our dogs we share those systems with our dogs, but we might see it more quickly or at a more exponential rate in our dogs because of their shorter lifespans. But those same things are happening for us. So, as I always say on the podcast, there is such an invitation through our dogs to be able to look at how do we create the change that we want to see in the world. And so that might start with, I want a probiotic spray for my itchy dog, but then there's that ripple effect of, I need to be considerate about the endocrine disruptors that are in my shampoos, as
mm.
an example. Like it kind of it facilitates that kind of connection. So you are certainly helping people at the same time that you're helping dogs.
Oh, absolutely. And I love, I mean, obviously you can't do this, be involved in this whole industry if you don't like stroke love animals. But above that, the I've kind of come to realize that as much as I love animals, it's the people who love animals that I love. And because they, as you say, they make the changes. They're at that. And not only that, they're in a state, in an emotional state of giving and loving, and it's a wonderful state to be in. And if more people were in that particular state, we'd have a lot less problems around, wars and violence and so on. So I absolutely love them. So that we started to look at them as almost like the spearhead. These are the people who make the change. These are the people who won't go, meh. They will actually say, hang on a minute. I'm not giving my dog that crap to eat. Or sorry, can you say crap?
You can.
It's always a funny thing 'cause the dogs will eat crap anyway, literally. So, which is fine. So yeah, so we absolutely love pet owners, and it's a real privilege to be involved. And we get it. Sometimes people are really worried and really concerned. And yeah, we have. But as you say, it's this thing about a natural approach. If you're a natural minded, if you're naturally minded in one area, the chances are that then becomes your mindset for all areas. And I remember one guy telling me about his dogs, eh, and this was a historic situation he was talking about, that he'd figured out the problem for his dog was the guy's aftershave. And I remember saying to him, look, your dog won't have been born with some kind of aversion to that brand of cologne. This will be a build-up of chemicals and toxins in the body, and then you get straws breaking camels' backs, you know? So we help people take the straws off, but also you can be sure that that guy, when he found out, this is before he ever met me, but when he found out that that was the issue, he would be thinking twice about what he's spraying in the air or what he's, you know, even maybe the packaging his food comes in. He just changes choices. And you're not talking about people all of a sudden becoming, white witches or anything like that. It's a little mindset change. You go, I don't want to buy that. I'd rather buy this. Now, if you get back to like we talked about, I can't remember what it was before, and I was talking about the George Orwell thing in 1984, just give them beer, football, and gambling and keep them controlled. One big thing that we have as humans is our pocket. And if you vote with your pocket, then the people who are making gazillions at the upper, they will change. So, and that's another reason why I see like the pet lover doesn't just exist in and of themselves, although that may be their focus. Um, they're part of a whole ability to change. And when you say, well, I'm not going to buy this kind of food from this company. Who owns that company and who owns that company? Who owns that company? Oh, well, I'm not buying that food from them, but I'm not also buying this thing that they make and that thing that they make because that's okay. So now you've and what happens is that the company up here who are making gazillions and own all the other brands go, hey, look at us. We're making change, we're saving the planet. And you go, yeah, okay. You're just following the money. But that's as much as you can hope for. So you have the power as a pet guardian and as a human being to vote with your pocket, and that works. I'm not calling for general boycott of. Sorry, he wasn't general boycott. He was captain boycott, right? So that just for the historians out there, I know boycott was a captain, not a general. It's just saying I'm not calling for a general boycott of any particular brand. I'm just saying the evidence is there that when you change your buying habits, the people at the top of the change will follow you. They just want your money.
That's exactly right. It's exactly right. And I think as well, it's not about making every change overnight. I think,
Mm.
this community in particular can feel like a total overwhelm of, oh my God, I've got to change everything. And that's not it. It's starting, it's looking at, like you said, kind of evaluating what changes can you make if you have a job that requires you wearing the waterproofs and that's not necessarily a chemical that you can extricate from your life, but you can change your dishwashing liquid, for
Yeah,
example, or your shampoo, or
yeah,
in the case of looking at our dogs as well, the shampoos that we're using for them, or the cleaners that we're using on the floors where they're walking and laying down. Like those are some practical things that we can
yeah,
do. But I wondered if you could talk about, Joe, because like you said, we are really focused on the gut microbiome. I think kind of that's the microbiome that has received a lot of attention. And like I said to you, yes, we absolutely focus on the gut because the gut controls everything. The gut is linked to all of our health. And like you said, the things that we're spraying in the air are going to impact the gut microbiome. So it's not about dismissing the gut microbiome, but I think we sort of forget that the gut microbiome lives alongside other microbiomes as well that we can bring some
yeah.
focus to. So could you maybe talk about some of the
Yeah.
ways that you are supporting other microbiomes that we might need to be aware of?
Definitely. Well, look, anything that your eyes rest on, anything that you can see is covered in microbiome. Okay. There's parts of the maybe the Antarctic, maybe where not so much, but basically everything is covered in bacteria, especially bacteria, but all the other things as well. There might be some viruses on there, all living in perfect harmony with Mother Nature, and everything is just fine. And a couple of things I want to say about that real quick. One goes back to we were at the London Vet Show last year, and my friend was in one of the presentations, and he came back, and I was working the stand, and he said, "We've just been at this presentation. It was about ear health." And this was a presentation by the people that the vets would send the swabs to. Okay. And they would do the exam. And they said, from the stage, they said, here's a list of the bacteria we tend to find in the swabs you vets send us from infected ears. Here's a list of the bacteria that we tend to find in swabs that you vets send us from healthy ears. They just named the bacteria.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. It's the same list. So you got the same bacteria. One's got a problem scenario, one's got a no problem scenario. Okay. But we've been brought up to buy chemical stuff to kill bacteria. Bacteria is bad. Bacteria is bad. Kills 99% of all known germs, dead, right? And it's this emotion of basically killing and wiping out, plus certain people making a lot of money from chemicals that they couldn't use in any other ways. And then I'm choosing my words carefully here because then we go into the scenario. Okay, so I've used this to wipe out the bacteria. Okay, so I've wiped out the microbiome on my kitchen table, on my dog's fur with the anti-bac shampoo, on my hands when I've done it, when I've washed them. What happens next? Can somebody please tell me what happens next? You won't find that. It kills 99% of all bacteria. Great. Do we want that? Is that a good thing? Are you telling me that's a good thing? Let's read the advertisement again. No, it doesn't say that. Doesn't say that you need to kill it. It just says this kills 99%. Buy it. Do you know what's lurking under the rim? Do you remember those ads? Okay, with the Vincent Price kind of and the lightning bolt, dun-dun-dun, the thunder. Do you know what's lurking under the rim? No, I'm not eating my sandwiches there, right? So it's okay. Anyway, so let's wipe it out with a chemical. So let's then look at the surface and look at where the chemical goes. So on the surface now, you've killed all the microbiome, you wiped it out. What does Mother Nature do? Does she like vacuum? No, right? She's going to replace that. How long is it going to take? 20 minutes? Depending. I used to watch people during COVID, they put their hand sanitizer on and then they do this. This is covered in, or to do that, you have to stick the hand in a pocket. I mean, mate, okay, well, you're now covered. Because the hand sanitizer hasn't removed any dirt, it hasn't removed any food for bad bacteria. It's just killed all the stuff that was there. What happens next? So we wrote about this in, I think, the early days of the pandemic, and then I saw it in a newspaper, not our article, but someone they'd listened to basically. Yeah, causing antimicrobial resistance. So what's antimicrobial resistance? Well, that's what happens when you make the bugs stronger. The bugs, I'm going to say pathogen. What's a pathogen? It's kind of a wrong time, wrong place scenario. So a bit of staphylococcus on my hands, most of us have got it, no problem. A bit of staphylococcus in a wound, wrong time, wrong place. Now it's a pathogen. On the skin, it's not a problem. Okay, it's just part of the microbiome. So everything's covered in the microbiome. We've been told to wipe it out without being told what's going to happen next, and not educated to ask the question, well, if I do that, what will happen next? Because no one's going to know. If you're cleaning the surface of a hospital every day, 11 o'clock, you clean that surface. Well, from 11:30 round to 11 o'clock, that's 23 and a half hours a day, it's contaminated. So you've just killed off the microbiome. Now, before we get to the gut microbiome, a couple of things also happen. That if you said to somebody, I've got these bad bacteria and I want to make them stronger, what do I do? Well, it's a similar to if you had a bunch of wild horses and you want to make them stronger, you're going to cull the herd, you're going to breed the better ones together, the ones that can, even with plants, the ones that can handle drought, you're going to breed them. It's the same, the bad bacteria. You kill off all the competition with your chemicals, wipe out the microbiome, and the stronger ones can survive sometimes, and they're the ones that replicate. So whenever you hear the resistant, antibiotic resistant problems with MRSA, this is where it comes from. So back in 2005, there was a professor from London University and London, yeah, London College Hospital, that one in Euston.
Mm-hmm.
And he said he was looking at the presence of MRSA. and the growth. And he said it's starting, we see it, we track it from the areas of the hospital that are cleaned the most. These are the ones with the MRSA. He said we should be cleaning our hands with soap and yogurt, right? Why yogurt? Because we didn't exist there. He didn't have a probiotic hand soap. So this is what we should be doing. So basically, if you're going to wipe out that microbiome, what are you going to put back? Quick, quick, before it gets replaced by something that may be okay and may not be okay. So we take control. So that's what we do with probiotics. We have like the microbiome in a bottle. So everything's covered in a microbiome. Now, the stuff you're going to use to kill that microbiome off doesn't just do it one. It's not a one-time thing. So you've used that bleach or you've used that antibacterial. Where's it going? Down the plug hole. Maybe it's drying and evaporating just to come down somewhere else and rain and into the river. Okay, so now we have a ubiquitous situation where we're surrounded by chemicals. You find the long chain chemicals from Teflon, you're going to find those in the Arctic. You're going to find them very high up the Himalayas because they're just getting everywhere. You'll find them in polar bears. It's a bit like microplastics, you're finding it everywhere. And I remember the first time reading about how they'd found it in the cell of a heart, then the cell of a brain, then placenta, then mother's milk. Okay. I was at a thing about pollution, water pollution recently, and there was a reference to a study where they were taking bloods from people, giving them a cup of tea, made with tea bags, and then taking the bloods again and measuring the microplastics in the blood just from the tea bags and go, okay, so yeah. And I remember Nick Thompson saying that to me last year actually about tea bags. So yeah, we're getting rid of tea bags out of our house now. But and go back to loose leaf tea and then drinking less of it because it tastes like proper tea. You're not just swilling it because you have a cup of tea. It feels like the old days when you have a cup of tea. Done. I need to drink less tea. So the chemicals are out there. They're going into the environment. They're going into the water. More about that in a second because that's relevant to your pet's health. You're creating a MRSA or similar. We're getting the rise of C. difficile in the home, where it's usually only associated with hospitals and so on. But this stuff now, you're breathing it in. So you've got a quite a delicate and fascinating gut microbiome with a gut can recognize. Again, we talked about certain bacteria being good in one place and a problem in another place. Certain bacteria in the gut that the gut lining doesn't want to let too close to the gut lining. So the mucus of the gut will hold that back. It will let other bacteria into the mucus that don't hurt the gut lining, and they can help also by their sheer presence hold back the ones that do. So you want those guys in the gut doing their job, but you don't near the line. So it's amazing, right? It's so clever. There's certain kinds of I think animals and fish and insects that cannot live without bacteria. Ones that can only develop their own microbiome when they eat the poop of their mother, right? And so on. It's phenomenal. So again, the question, what happens next? In this case, applied to you spraying something around it's designed specifically to kill microbiome. How's that affecting us? Well, I mentioned earlier about the connection with indoor chemicals and child obesity. A study came out in 2008, and I remember it was called a wake-up call, but it hasn't really worked as a wake-up call. It's just a hidden thing. New York State, where they're testing the blood and urine of pets and comparing it to the blood and urine of the pet owners living in exactly the same space and finding way more chemicals in the pets. Okay, where's that coming from? That's interesting. Okay, so lots of other things. I was just watching a thing about dementia here today, because we have that in the family, and where's that coming from? Where's the rise of that? Where's the rise of cancer coming from? What the hell is happening? Could it be at all linked with all the extra chemicals and microplastics that are in the environment? And I say chemicals because the microplastics are more recent, but the chemicals have been building ever since the Second World War. So if I go back to my great grandfather, who was born in 1895, no, actually, it's my granddad, born in 1895. I go to his mum and say, do you know what? We're going to have this brilliant development. You're going to love it. We're going to start using mild poisons inside the house and say we're doing it in the name of health. Ta-da. And she's going to say, really? That's the future? That I'm not so sure about that. Okay. So why are we doing that? Well, it makes a lot of money for a small amount of people. A lot of money. Okay. And all the stuff ends up into the environment. Now, as a pet owner and pet guardian and pet parent, why should you be bothered about the environment? Well, there's a study from Bristol University, and it was uh, I got into this by somebody posted it online saying this is why they would never raw feed their dog, and they posted to this particular study, and the studies said that they found in a sample of dogs they found um, more resistant bacteria in the dogs who were raw fed. So I thought, again, I'm thinking of my own grandparents and their dogs. That doesn't make sense, you know. So you go looking at the and actually, what does it actually say? So well, it does say that, but it also says that in the countryside they found the resistant bacteria that were associated with sort of the farms, and in the urban areas they found resistant bacteria that were associated with humans. So it's not a case. I know quite a few raw feeding manufacturers, and none of them have ever said, "Oh yeah, we only sell in the towns, or we only sell in the country." So the food the dogs are eating obviously isn't the common denominator here. So you keep reading it, because my point was, well, if people are cleaning more, could they produce more resistant bacteria? We know they can from cleaning. That's a well documented thing. So yeah, and it goes back to the question of, well, if you're wiping out the microbiome in the home, what happens next? Well, we just mentioned about antimicrobial resistance. We just mentioned that Mother Nature will use the bacteria around is what's going to fill the gap, right? That's what's there. Coming off of us, we have a little halo of bacteria on us, in us. You know, again, average weight and height guy, maybe I don't know, 30 trillion microorganisms on me, in me, around me. So I'm kind of like just populating this. As I walk past, I'm populating that space with bacteria, you know. I'm coating the world as I just walk past it. I can't help it. So this pointed away from the food and towards something else. I did suggest that to the person that made the post. It didn't go down very well, so I left it at that. But it went further when I read this that for the urban dogs, there was the same correlation, not mentioned in the post, but there was the same correlation with paddling as there was with feeding, but that wasn't mentioned in the post. So hang on. How can your dog end up with resistant bacteria from paddling in a stream? Okay, right. I can see how it's going to get it at home. Yeah, you're cleaning. Maybe your raw feeder's cleaning a little bit more than the person who's not raw feeding. But what are you putting down your toilet? What are you cleaning your toilet with? What are you washing your hands with? Where does the anti-bac shampoo go when you wash your dog? Is it down the plug hole? Are you doing it outside? Is it evaporating and it comes down as rain? What about what you clean your car with? That's a big problem. That's like millions and millions of liters of car cleaning product going straight into the rivers. Okay. And then your dog paddles in those rivers. So this is the whole thing. We're just a sliver of this, but it's this awareness of what you're putting out there. So we thought, okay, and we're still on question two, Alexia. So we thought, okay, look, we're just going to use Mother Nature. The probiotics work. We know they work. People have used probiotics in various ways for, I don't know, millennia, using moss from trees to treat wounds and so on, soil, all kinds of stuff, using the good bacteria that Mother Nature puts there and giving those guys a helping hand. Okay? So what that means is that we're just promoting the good bacteria. We're not trying to get rid of the bad bacteria because who are we to say that they're bad, right? In small numbers that don't remember to those ear swabs, same different bacteria. It's all about the balance. Lots of good ones. You can still have the bad ones. Don't worry about them. They're going to fade away, because they don't have the food. The good ones will have the food. So we're changing the microbiome of the surfaces that way. We're not spraying anything that's going to damage the microbiome of the gut. So when your dog comes in outside where it's been raining and he's going out for a wee, now his paws are wet, or he's just sweating, and he's walking across the kitchen floor and he's reabsorbing, re-wetting whatever that chemical is on there. And now it's in direct contact with his skin and he's absorbing that. Or maybe even he's licking it, so he's absorbing it that way as well. Or maybe it's just evaporated and the dogs are so much closer to the floor than we are. Cats as well, guinea pigs, you name it, and they're breathing in whatever's coming off of that. So we can just avoid that. We don't have to go killing. We don't have to think I have to kill bacteria. I have to kill things. We just, you know what? We let Mother Nature do the work. We give her a little nudge in the right direction, and we do a approach, a not just probiotic, but pro-life approach. Got to be careful how you say that in certain places, right? But a pro-life approach. So let's put more to good ones. A good example would be that if you had a lawn with a few weeds and you said to somebody, look, can you get rid of those few weeds? He goes, yeah, I'll get rid of the weeds for you. And you come out and there's not a blade of anything. Got rid of the weeds, pay me. Job done. He did what he said on the tin. Everything's fine. Whatever's going to grow back now is going to be dependent on what birds fly over, what blows in the wind from, you don't know, right? And you fingers crossed it's going to be something that you want. Or you can just put lots of good seed down of what it is you do want, and you take control and you proactive, life affirming, that kind of mindset rather than trying to kill it. I would go further in this and say, yes, remember lots of people making money off of the back of this. But I remember, and it's coming to mind, a little report that I went looking for. Um, with there's certain reports you can get that are online, they're freely available. And this one was called, I think it was from a group called Health England. And I was looking at the amount of deaths from bacterial infections. And it was just in England.
Human
Didn't
deaths. This is
human deaths.
human deaths, yeah.
Human deaths. Yeah. Humans are people too. So and I'm looking at that and going, okay, I'm lining this up with people telling me, no, you've got to kill bacteria, you've got to kill. How quickly will it kill? What's the touch time? How long do we leave it on there for to kill all the stuff? And that's the only way to do it. And I'm looking at this report that's telling me that 65,000 people died in 1 year from bacterial infections. I go, that's it was a 2017 report. Something I was doing before COVID. It just comes to mind. 65,000 people. Okay. I don't think what you're doing is working. So this negative approach, this kill, get rid of, don't care the consequence, don't think about what happens next, either to the environment or to the thing you're cleaning, or to how less healthful it's going to be. 65,000 people died from bacterial infections. Now, there we go. Now that we hear that happening, but why are they dying? You go back to the guy 20 years ago in uh, London College Hospital saying, hang on, we shouldn't be cleaning like this. We should be cleaning with hand soap and yogurt for the probiotics. And think, well, what's changed in that period of time? And we had studies going back to 2018, I think, shown in Italy, where they had 5 hospitals, and they managed to reduce the incidence of healthcare acquired infections by 52%.
Wow.
Other reductions in the use of antibiotics, reductions in cost, reductions in antimicrobial resistance. And this would equate to something around 19 deaths per week in the NHS, and nothing changes. So this was us banging our head against the wall. But the pet owner comes along and goes, I don't want that. I get that. I want to know what happens next. I want to feed my dog right. I don't want the vet bills. Have you seen the vet bills the way they've gone in the past 10 years? Let's keep away from the vet, right? So let's keep the dog healthy, and let's not spray chemicals. How many dogs are going to get sick directly from chemicals? Man, it's really difficult to say. Is it one of those straws on top of the camel's back? Yeah. Is it a straw on the top of the human's back? Absolutely. The numbers are there. So that's what we do. Microbiome of the gut protected by not spraying antimicrobiome stuff, not producing resistant bacteria, and not putting the microbiome killing stuff down our plug holes for it to come back on us. And this is what ubiquitous means. Bloody everywhere. Sorry again, I'm blood. Sorry. So it's everywhere. So could we just stop it, please? Now, climate change, right? I know it's not the top of the agenda for the pet parent, but just to give you an idea, not everybody believes, we talked about this. Some people don't believe in climate change, some people do believe in climate change. My background in heat pumps and efficiency and global warming potential of different refrigerant gases and all this was very much front and center. How we would deliver air into a place where we could equalize the heating and not waste heating and even down to how often the door would open in a refrigerated area. All is all really important. Efficiency, reducing the amount of energy used was really, really important. And that is, we went off there in a different direction because we found about the chemical problem. And even the the Chartered Institute that covered the section of industry I was in, they pointed out that cleaning products were a problem, right? Because they were involved in ventilation. Cleaning industry didn't want to know that at the time. Now they do because people are getting on the bandwagon, and guess what? There's to be made money, right? So now it's a thing. But back then it was very much meh. So everybody apart from the people actually using the cleaning products, new cleaning products were a problem. So anyway, I'm kind of rambling here a little bit. Am I covering? I don't want to bore anybody.
No, but I think this is really helpful, Joe. And there are some things, some nuggets that I want to pull out from what you've been saying. And I think one of the big ones that stands out to me is about a life-affirming approach to how we're dealing with these issues. Because we know, like the World Health Organization has talked about how antimicrobial resistance is one of the top priorities for them. Like because the ongoing impacts too of it's that thing that I always talk about taking a targeted approach when we're using anything, whether that be supplements, whether that be drugs, etc. You want to target because if we just overuse something like antibiotics as an example, which functions in the same way as these cleaning products, right? It wipes everything out. It's not targeting one specific strain that's causing a problem in the body. It wipes everything out. You have that problem of overpopulation of sort of unwanted or the imbalance kind of occur. But you also have, we start to see that the pathogens become resistant to antibiotics. So when you actually need them, they don't work.
Yeah,
And that's part of the bigger issue that's happening. And we're seeing that in our pets as well.
yeah,
But this kind of the life affirming approach touches on what you and I were discussing before we started recording, where we are being invited into a massive paradigm shift in the way that we're thinking about health, in the way that we're thinking about connection. And I think there's a struggle for us in the West where culturally, our approach to health has been very much an allopathic one, where you see a symptom and the aim is to get rid of that symptom. It's all targeted towards getting rid of that kind of getting rid of mentality.
mhm,
Whereas in the East, which is why I'm a massive proponent of traditional Chinese medicine as a philosophy for health, whether or not you actually are ascribing to the specifics of it, if you take the philosophy of the way that they're looking at it, I think there's so much wisdom for us all to glean from it.
mhm,
And that is about seeing everything in balance and in harmony, working together. To your point, the issue is something like yeast in a dog. It's not a yeast problem, it's a yeast overgrowth problem. That's the
mhm.
key term. It's the overgrowth. Yeast is natural. It's everywhere. But it becomes a problem when there's a burden of it, when there's an overgrowth. So that's again out of balance.
Yeah,
When we start to approach not just the way that we're thinking about gut health, although, like we've said, that is at the core of everything. But when we are taking that kind of paradigm shift around health, of how we're thinking about ourselves in the world from a life affirming perspective, of recognizing that everything plays a role, everything has a right to exist. You know, it's not about it's kind of it's stepping out of that anthropocentric perspective of I don't want this, therefore it shouldn't exist. We see it with parasite prevention as well. You
yeah.
know, I bang on about the whole issue around the treatments around that and understanding that if we were to wipe out all fleas and ticks, which some people want, they would love it if there were no fleas and ticks. But you have to see that they are critical components of the wider ecosystem.
Mhm, mhm. Yeah, you've only got to look at a bird sitting on the back of a rhino or the chest of a giraffe eating ticks to know that, look, this is part of the whole, you want to starve that little bird's babies, basically. Yeah, it's all connected. Yeah, absolutely. And just when you're talking, there was three really good examples that have come to mind from what you just saying. One is when we started in the early part of our journey. I went to speak to my vet, we've been paying the plan in and buying that wonderful dry food, the best dry food for our cat and all that. Okay. They didn't want to take a meeting, which I thought was strange after I'd paid into them for 20 years and the plans and whatever. Spoke to another vet who I knew socially, didn't know the difference between corporate and independent. Found he was an independent vet with 20 vets in his practice. And he came along and he was brilliant. And he said he knew all about the microbiome. He made his own, he fermented his own kefir and so on. He said, this is great. He says, we have a problem with ears. Now, as you say, something's out of balance, that naturally occurring yeast, and now he's got an issue or whatever. But they were seeing a situation where, for whatever reason, a dog would have an ear infection, a bacterial ear infection. It may have started off with a yeast, and maybe they use antibiotics, and then, but they were seeing this repeating cycle. So this is now I'm kind of verbatim remembering the not verbatim but paraphrasing the vet's words, but he would say, look, we would treat the dog, great, antibiotics did their job, lovely. And then a couple of weeks after the course would finish, this dog would present again. So we'd swab it, we'd get it off to the lab, we'd take a look, trying to get the different antibiotics, and it was a different bug, different pathogen, a different infection cause. And they get rid of it, and the dog would come back a month or so two later and another infection, and they'd swab it and it's yet another thing. So it was talking about one particular dog, and it's gone on for 7 years, right? And most dogs would have their inner ear removed by this stage. They'd have the total ablation and have the whole thing taken out because the vet would be like, God, I don't know what to do. Who knows? But we keep wiping out the microbiome, leaving the ear undefended. So thinking about the biome like a also as a defense mechanism. And something else would come and gain ascendancy and set up shop. And so they're seeing this repeat, repeat, repeat. And he stopped it by just this pro approach. Do you know what? Let's not try and kill off the baddies. Let's just put lots of goodies in there, right? And if you had an antisocial problem in a area of your town, and if you could flood that area with families that knew you were all good families, right? Then eventually your antisocial problem is going to go away. You don't have to go and just shoot dead the bad guys, right? It's, probably that's not the best analogy here, Okay, nobody quote me on that one, Alexia. But this approach then worked. He got really excited. He said, "This is what we're finding," and he's telling me then after he's done it. He says, "When this came along, it was just what we were looking for," and then we started hearing the same story from other people who said, "Oh, my dog's gonna have the whole inner ear out," and then we went to this vet up the road here, and his second opinion, and he gave us your stuff, and now we didn't have to have the surgery. We didn't get the repeat infection. All by just saying, let's just give Mother Nature a hand. Let's not wipe out. So it's this mindset, and not only mindset, but behind that mindset of kill, 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 who's making money and who's suffering? They're the questions, right? So we thought about that, and I thought as well, he brought to mind, I have a cousin called Dr. Connor Kerley. Now he only deals with humans, but he's still a good guy, right? So Connor is has his own range of supplements, and this goes back to Connor's own multiple sclerosis diagnosis at age 15. Yeah, and coming away from the drugs and just going into diet and finding out more about the diet and more about the diet. So Connor is drug and symptom free with MS due to his diet. So now his supplements are for he has a fertility one. He's one for MS. He's got energy ones. He's looking at blood pressure. He's looking at Parkinson's disease. Not by wiping things out, but by looking at the brain's short of this and that and magnesium and B12 and again it's that pro approach of giving lots of the good stuff and he loves it. He loves posting when he gets letters from I won't go into it, but he gets real joy out of success. You can imagine, especially when you're selling something to do with fertility. So the idea of just giving the body more of what it needs, not trying to take away this, just give the body, and look, it'll sort itself out. And the third one that comes to mind is there's a product we do, which it's not a probiotic, but it is topical. So you put it on the surface, and it would typically go on the back of the dog's neck. And its roots are in the bark of a particular hibiscus plant in a particular small set of islands in Polynesia. And they've been using this for eons. And it stimulates the body's own regenerative capability for like bone fractures and cartilage and so on. And again, instead of trying to fix a problem, it just give the body its stuff, give the body what it needs, give it more. And again, this is where, natural feeding, raw feeding comes in and not using chemicals and looking after yourself and getting a good night's sleep. All of these things come back into Listen, this is only what our great great grandparents were doing. That's all. This isn't science or revelation, really. It's just, you know what? We've been sold all these fix it, wipe it out chemicals, buy my stuff, which does not do what it says in the tin. Okay, no one's telling lies, but the whole story may not be shown. So yeah, this pro approach, I'm with you 1,000,000%. Um, and being in that mind and being in that mode, whether it's how you train your puppy, whatever it is, it just all comes back to, and we're stoked to be part of that. To be able to reduce people's chemical exposure, the dog's chemical exposure, especially, the dogs and cats, they don't get a choice. Whatever you clean your home with is going to end up inside with them, and they don't get the choice with this. They got a bit of a choice with the food because they turn their nose up, I tell you, when they're ready to, but other things they don't. So using the probiotic, just giving Mother Nature, um, just give her a little bit of helping hand. It's just that simple, and she does her thing. And this other thing of killing bacteria, for God's sake, where does all life on this planet originate? What would we be? Where does the air we breathe come from? So, and you're going to try and kill that off? It's just like that's Harry Carey, you know?
It's
It's
it's it's just insanity, but I think it points to one of what I would argue is like the greatest illusions that we within, which is the illusion of disconnection,
mm,
the illusion of separation. And I think, this is obviously Mystic Dogma. We have a lot of like esoteric conversations on here, but I think this is part of when we talk about the veil of illusion that we live within, the veil of separation. This is the practical experience of that. Do we see ourselves not just as separated from one another as individuals, but separate from the wider systems? And how do we see ourselves within the bacteria? Like that, I'm not saying as a direct mirror of they look like you, but in terms of like we are all connected. And the reality is we would all be dead without them. When you
yeah,
look even from like to understand digestion and nutrition, it's not really about the food you eat. What is most important is how is that gut microbiome able to make use of the food that you eat? That's the big thing, right? So we are completely dependent upon them. But we have come from this anti kind of mentality, what I would argue is a fear mentality. And when we're talking about life affirming and the probiotic, pro life, that this really is coming from that space of love. And
mhm.
so I also talk about quite often that have you read the book A Course in Miracles? Have you heard of that?
Oh, A Course in Miracles. We'll
A
make a note.
Course in Miracles. It's a channeled text that came from some psychologists at Columbia University in New York that all of a sudden this text started coming through, and the woman who was receiving it, coming from a very clinical background, was like, what on earth is this about? And whether or not you believe in this was coming from Yeshua or any of that stuff, the the lessons within it are just so powerful, and they ring true. And one of the core truths that comes through that is that anything that we do, anything that we say, anything that we think at its core is fundamentally either coming from a place of fear or coming from a place of love.
Yeah.
And
Mm.
so when we can go back to, this is something that I use as a guiding principle for myself, particularly, and I think our pets are really good at bringing up a lot of fear for us because, again, we love them so much and we want to care for them. And when something seems to go wrong, it triggers that fear. And that's where, so been through that with Lucky. He's had kidney issues. Like that is what got me into all this. So I'm not speaking from a place of never having gone through this. I'm speaking from a place of absolutely having this as my lived experience and seeing that as a teaching for me as well. How can I approach everything that I'm doing with him and in my life generally from a place of love more often than from a place of fear? Because I'm human and I fall into the fear trap too, but can I call myself back to it? And I think what you're offering in terms of this conversation and in terms of what you're trying to do in shaping the world is absolutely coming from that place of how do we take more loving action? How do we be more life affirming? How do we see ourselves as connected to all of this? And ultimately, then as stewards.
Mm, yeah.
stewards for ourselves, our animals, and the planet. And I think it's just really beautiful and really important because it signals a wider shift for me as well.
Yeah. I really love what you said there. And again, it is a privilege for us. And we do see ourselves as guardians and guardians of the planet, you know, and guardians of we only have this for a short, it's entrusted to us for a short period of time. But I also think that we said we're coming from a place of love, we're coming from a place of fear. You know, fear is great because it stops us getting eaten by the saber-toothed tiger when we were living in caves, and of course, but we resonate and but I think people are becoming aware that we are a vibration. We have a vibration in us, and it's like, well, if we're magnets, we're going to tr like attracts like. So therefore, what are you vibrating out? What are you telling your subconscious? We used to talk about how your conscious mind would be like the guy driving the truck, but the massive big truck with all the power is the subconscious. Okay, and it's dumb. So if you say it doesn't understand do and don't, it just picks up. You say, don't crash. What'd you say? Crash? Okay. Yes, sir. Whatever. You know, sick. You want to be sick? You said sick. No, no, don't sick. Sorry, I don't understand. Don't just heard sick. Okay, sick. Let's go there. So just a being, you know. So there's a huge amount that we can do ourselves. And of course, dogs don't worry. And it's a great thing for them. They don't worry. Somebody told me that when he was showing me around a cancer specialist. Uh, Specializing in dog cancer and showing me the various machines that use and MRIs or whatever. And I asked him about his results. He said, "Yeah, dogs don't worry. They don't worry themselves into it." So we got to be careful what we're putting out there, not just in terms of, "Oh my God, I stop worrying." What's your approach? What's your approach to going to work? How do you drive? You get back what you put out there, you know, calm as a bitch, if you want to put it that way. Um, and what your whole being like. And a lot of your clients and people who would uh, be tuning into your pod would already be there. They'd be thinking this is the and they're connected with other people like that, you know. And I'm very lucky. I came from a very big family, not immediately, but we had just an embarrassing amount of cousins and aunties and uncles, and that's how we grew up. And um, you were connected whether you wanted to be or not. You could go nowhere without somebody recognize who you belong to. You know, you could do nothing wrong nowhere as a teenager, you know. But you were always connected, and we are all connected, and our microbiomes are shared. And a lovely story. There's a lady at um, who phoned in a few times, and I got to understand that she was autistic. So when she'd phone in, I just stop what I'm doing and just give her my full attention, do nothing else. And she was just so sweet and lovely. But in the middle of it, she was telling me about her uh, sending away the fecal testing, and she got a phone call from them, basically saying something along the lines of, "We're just double checking here because we found the microbiome of your dog is something we'd expect to see that in a person with autism." And he said, "Yeah, that's me." So if ever you're thinking you're not sharing your microbiome with your dog, well, the next time he licks your face, you know you are. But we're just in that space. People are connected. We're connected with microbiome. And you, as you said, the microbiome connected with, you know, not just mental health, but even Alzheimer's and all kinds of like just how you are in your whole self is it's like the whole engine of us is in this gut microbiome, and then you've got lung microbiome and so.
Everything, everything.
Everything. Yeah.
Joe, this has been so wonderful. For people, you have such beautiful products as well. You've got dental sprays, you've got ear sprays, you have sprays for hot spots, shampoos, cleaners that you can use in your home. You have everything. And I have to say, I don't often recommend products. I'm not somebody that endorses products, but I always recommend your products to clients because they offer, like I said, it's a life affirming approach, right? And when they've tried so many of the anti things, yours, it's like a breath of fresh air to be able to offer something that is helping to support the microbiome in coming back into balance, coming back into homeostasis. So, which is why I wanted to speak with you because I often am recommending your stuff to clients because of that. Where can people go to get more information on the products and where they might be able to find them in their local areas as well?
Okay, so if you go onto the website, so all the W's, ingenious-probiotics.com, there's a map on there. And if you go into the Discover section, you'll find articles, um, news things we've written. You'll find interviews we've done, case studies, customer reviews, which always just give us great heart, whether it's one of the recent ones was a dog with these skin cancer and all these massive kind of like sores all over its body, about the size of a 50 pence piece, if you know what I mean. But that's and we use the probiotics just to heal those up. We're not medicine. We don't. I can't use the H word. We're not vets. We're not medicine. We don't heal. We don't treat. But you can put those on there,
To
and
support, to support.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And there's also just which is great. Dog still has cancer, but the dog's a lot more comfortable. So little things like that you'll see on those, and some of them may resonate with you, or you might just want to be using a prophylactic approach and just preventing using a good microbiome of the mouth or the dental care to keep away the bad bacteria that would cause plaque or gingivitis or something, but just by having a positive change and a positive set. Yeah.
Wonderful. And I will leave that link in the show notes as well. I have one final question for you if you're open to it.
Well, I think we've done two questions so far. So we can
Well, we'll definitely have to have you back. I love this conversation. I love that you're up for this kind of broader conversation too. And I guess along those lines of having a kind of broader stance on this, something that I ask my guests, and because you come from a cat background as well, I'll allow the feline intervention into this too. But I often ask my guests, what do you feel that dogs or cats have taught you about what it means to be human?
Mm, I think ramifications, our actions have consequences, and we forget that sometimes. And we have this wonderful ability to choose our action and therefore choose the consequences. And the dogs and cats are a more immediate reflection back of what you're doing, and so sometimes just to stop and think, to basically get out of your own head, get over yourself sometimes, and say, okay, I'm a bit busy, but that cat's not looking right, or hang on a minute, this cat's cute. Just give me a minute. I'll be back to work in a couple of, let me just spend a minute here and and that's what we get back. I get the grounding back. So and our oldest cat's 16 and a half. So he's and like a lot of parents who have got kids, the pet would have belonged to this particular pet belonged to my daughter. She's had this since she was 8 years old, So he's a major, major part of our life, and we all worry about him. And the younger cat, the young one's 11. She's a spring chicken, and she's great, and she'll come and just sit beside you, and just kind of gives off that vibe of, hey, don't take things so seriously, Joe. Chill out, man. Um, that's that's what I get. And the cat that we lost to kidney disease was just the most amazing company. There was illness in the house at the time. We brought the cat in. He just really helped. He really helped. And I didn't mind. You wake up with this kind of pain in your leg or pain in your neck, and you realize the cat's on the pillow when you're sleeping at a funny angle, and you don't go. You kind of then trying to move without waking the cat up, and you're going, "What am I doing? What am I doing?" Yeah, it's just. But yeah, I'd say what they do is they take you out of yourself. They show you a very quick reflection on your actions and make you stop and think if you let them.
I love that. Thank you so much. Thank you for your time, your energy, and your wisdom today. I'm really grateful for this conversation.
Oh, thank you for everything that you're doing and Stacey's doing. It's just it's amazing, guys, and um, you're at that forefront of the movement that's helping with the world right now. The world is in a bit of a dark. Here we are at the end of 2025, and the world's in a kind of dark place if you look at it that way. And yet there's people out there like you guys, you're shining a light and just and helping. What's even more important, helping other people to shine whatever light that they have the ability to shine, And that's also important that you don't have to be doing it. Just whatever it is that you can do, that you be in that state and you're helping people do and multiplying your good vibe by all those people. It's fantastic.
Thank you. Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much for joining me for my conversation with Joe Flanagan of Ingenious Probiotics. For more information on Joe's beautiful products and where you can order them or find them in a retailer near you, please visit ingenious-probiotics.com. You can also follow them on Instagram at Ingenious Probiotics. I've left these links in the show notes. If you are enjoying the podcast, please consider liking, subscribing, leaving a review, or even just sharing your favorite episodes with your friends. All of this really helps to grow our community and help other Mystic Dog mamas and papas find the support that they're looking for. And if you would like to be part of a community of like-hearted guardians, then come and join my free Facebook group, Fetch First Light. It's my sanctuary where soulful dog mamas like you find clarity, confidence, and connection. You can search Fetch First Light on Facebook or just click the link that I've left in the show notes. All right, until next time.